Hi, everybody. Today's Saturday, April 4th, 2026, and our dear friend or brother, Professor Marandi, is here with us. Welcome back, Professor.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Nima. It's always a great pleasure.
Uh, Professor Marandi, yesterday and the day before yesterday, I would say there was something going on in Pentagon, in the military, in the army of the United States, because many generals, more than 12 generals, were somehow forced to resign or were dismissed from their position in the United States. And there is huge, I would say, disagreement within the command system in the United States. On the other hand, yesterday we had, after all, the totally obliterated air defense system of Iran responding to, you know, to American fighter jets and to helicopters, Black Hawk helicopters, who came in the aftermath of what has happened with the hitting of the fighter jets. What is your understanding? Because many people are, even we had an article in CNN arguing that 50% of Iran arsenal was, depleted during this war. What is your take? What do you make of what's going on right now?
Well, I think those generals actually were quite fortunate that they were removed right after the events in Iran, where the jets were downed and the helicopters badly damaged. Uh, I think that it's quite clear that the generals believe that what Trump and Netanyahu are pushing for and what the Zionists are pushing for is a terrible idea. And Trump is so obsessed, or he's being forced to because he's compromised, that he has to carry on. And I think that's exactly what the Iranians want. The Iranians want the United States to attack because the Iranians have been prepared for this war. As I said on many occasions, for years, that Iran has been planning for a US attack on the country for well over 2 decades. And it's not just the missile systems and the drones. And remember, we have to keep in mind that it's well over a month now. There's no shortage of missiles, there's no shortage of drones, and there won't be any shortage in the months ahead either. Uh, the Americans and the Israeli regime either miscalculated or there are people who intentionally lied to get the United States into this war. But the Iranians have been preparing themselves for a very long time. So when they prepared their missiles and drones and anti-aircraft systems, I think we discussed this at least once before. I retweeted a tweet of my own a while ago that I put out, I think, 10 days ago, yesterday, that showing Iranian air defenses deep underground in uh, underground tunnels, just like the drones and the missiles. So Iran's air defenses are protected. They didn't leave them out in the open for the Americans and the Israelis to target them at the beginning. And as we all know, the Iranians, during the last 8, 9 months, they put out huge numbers of decoys for air defense, for launchers, for all sorts of things, for drones, for planes. So the Americans and the Israelis have destroyed a large number of decoys, spending billions of dollars, I suppose, destroying those decoys, whereas the real things were underground. Iran's Navy has the same status. The Americans bombed a few naval ships that are not useful for war. Uh, those were uh, in port when they were bombed, and they'll be repaired later on. Of course, they destroyed one which was unarmed, and it was in an international program uh, in on its between India and Sri Lanka. But that aside, the Americans have not touched the Iranian Navy. The Navy, these speedboats, are in huge underground bases, and they will be deployed when the time comes. So when Iran has all those underground bases, and we've seen footage of the underground bases for the for the Navy. We've seen footage for the air defenses. We've seen footage for the drones and the missiles. So Iran has obviously also prepared itself for a land attack, for an attack on its territory in the Persian Gulf. They've been preparing for decades. So when the Americans try to take an island or they try to take territory, they will be badly hammered. They can they can take territory perhaps for a while, but ultimately they'll have to leave. And that will have no impact on the status of the Strait of Hormuz, as we discussed before. The Strait of Hormuz is not controlled by people standing alongside the shore. This is not the 20th century. This is not the 19th century. Iran's bases are hundreds of kilometers inside Iranian territory. The same way which Iran strikes the Israeli regime on a daily basis, the same way in which it strikes US assets in the Persian Gulf, that'll be the same way in which it strikes US troops and in which it will strike ships and tankers in the Persian Gulf or the Strait of Hormuz or in the Gulf of Oman or in the Indian Ocean. So the Iranians are prepared for this. The longer the war lasts, the better it is for Iran. Not that we like war. We didn't want this war. We didn't start this war. We didn't start the previous war 9 months ago, 10 months ago now. We didn't start the war which the Americans imposed on us in 1980 by encouraging Saddam Hussein to invade us, where the West gave him chemical weapons. We didn't start a single war. But now that we're in this war, we have to make sure that the Americans never attack us again. And the only way to do that is to punish them in a way in which they regret attacking Iran, in which a future president, after this psychopath, when he comes to office, everyone will say, forget Iran. So Iran's security has to be assured. And that can only be done when the facts on the ground change. So Iran has destroyed US bases in the Persian Gulf. It will not allow them to be used ever again against the country. Those regimes in the Persian Gulf, from now on, they're going to have to behave differently. That is changing the facts on the ground. And one means for doing that is controlling the Strait of Hormuz. So these regimes from now on know how they have to behave differently. Even the Saudis, who are perhaps exporting, who knows the real amount, because a lot of this is propaganda, but they're exporting maybe 3-4 million barrels a day to the Red Sea, maybe less, who knows, maybe a bit more. I'm not sure, because a lot of different things are being said, and some of this is just being said to bring down the price. But the Saudis and the others still rely heavily on the Persian Gulf, and they will always rely heavily on the Persian Gulf. And they'll always be forced, therefore, in future to make sure that they do not carry out any act of aggression against Iran, nor are used as a platform to carry out acts of aggression. So the Strait of Hormuz for Iran is not just about seeking or demanding reparations from these regimes for killing all these Iranians, because they're the Qatar, the Saudis, the Emirates, Kuwait, and Bahrain are all complicit in war crimes. They're all complicit in massive death and destruction. Right now, they're bombing Tehran. I don't know if you can hear, but in any case, so it's not just about that. It's also about the fact that the United States has been using the Strait of Hormuz to build those bases. So Iran is going to ensure that in future the Persian Gulf is a Gulf of peace, where Iranians can feel safe. That is changing the facts on the ground. And also, of course, Iran's allies across the region will have to be able to feel safe and secure as well. This is what has to happen. And the United States has not yet reached that stage, but it will. It will. The crisis that the Zionists and the United States and Trump have imposed on the world, this is going to end badly for the Israeli regime. Indians who are now facing severe economic difficulties, which will get worse by the day, They will recognize that the Israeli regime brought this upon them, that the Zionists brought this upon them, that Trump brought this upon them. Across Latin America, in Argentina, they will, when the hardship strikes, they'll know who started this war. They'll know that it was the Americans, the Zionist regime, the Zionist lobby, and these Arab proxies that are obedient to the United States that brought this upon them. This is not going to end well for the Israeli regime. True, we're going to be hurt. We're going to be badly hurt. Iranians recognize that. Those who are on the streets at night recognize that. Last night in Tajrish, they fired missiles very close to where people had gathered. And foreign journalists were there, and they were shocked to see that people would not budge. Apparently, they were not at previous gatherings to see that this was not the first. This was not the first time that people had been murdered by the missiles before, and people did not budge. So, people on the streets who are steadfast, people across the country who are supporting the armed forces, they recognize that every day we're being hit, we're giving martyrs, our infrastructure is being hit. But the only way to bring an end to this aggression is to make sure that the price is so high for the Americans and the Zionist regime that it never happens again.
How these Arab state GCC countries are participating, cooperating with the United States, because these helicopters should have they come from, I don't know, UAE, Kuwait, or some other countries in the Persian Gulf, Arabs in one of these Persian Gulf Arab states, or are they still using these countries, and to what extent they're using these countries? Because we had 2 drones coming to Iran from UAE, if I'm not mistaken. Your take on that?
Those 2 drones that you're referring to are UAE drones. In other words, they are directly involved militarily. The UAE is directly involved militarily. That is important. But all of the countries, they are providing the United States with their airspace, their territory, and their coast. All of them. HIMARS missiles are being fired at Iran from these countries, not even from within the bases that the United States control, from outside the bases. U.S. forces are stationed outside the bases. U.S. weapon systems are outside the bases. U.S. jets fly over these countries, they land in these countries. And in the case of the Emirates and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they pay for this war. They help fund the war. So all of this is well known to the Iranians. And of course, the helicopters, they all land in these territories. Where else can they go? It's clear that these countries are all a part of the war effort. And every time they pretend they're neutral or they feign outrage when Iran retaliates, they're just insulting our intelligence. It's clear that they're in the camp of the Israelis and the Zionists and the Americans. They're proxies. They have they don't have much agency. Qatar can pretend that it's a bit different, but it's not. They're all in the same camp. They may not like each other that much. They may not be happy with the situation, but they have really. I mean, if these 5 regimes, if these 5 family dictatorships told the Americans today that, okay, enough is enough, you have to leave. We're going to have great relations with you. We'll continue to have excellent economic ties and political ties, but no more military. We can't use our airspace. You can't use our territory. You can't have bases here, and you can't use the Persian Gulf on alongside our shores. The war would be over. Of course, Iran will still demand compensation, and it will receive it. And every day the war continues, the cost is going to be much more for these regimes. But the war would be over because the Americans cannot wage a war against Iran without using their territory. It's just not doable. So we are where we are. The war will continue. This war is not in the interest of the United States. Obviously, it's going to be catastrophic, but it's not in the interest of the Israeli regime either. It may be in the interest of Netanyahu and his people, but it's not in the interest of the Israeli regime. The longer this war lasts, the more despised this regime will be by all those people across the world whose lives are going to become more difficult. Everyone will know who's behind the war. It is Zionism. It is the Zionists. It is Netanyahu. It is Trump. And that, just like the genocide in Gaza, is going to make the regime sink further and further and further.
Professor Marandi, what has happened yesterday, it was unique because you see the people who are living in the region, in Yasuj, they're getting their rifles and hitting at the American helicopters. This is something, I think, for many people who
But
were
Nima, you're talking nonsense. Iranians want regime change. They're waiting for their freedom. Those police officers shooting at the helicopters, they thought these were ducks. They were it was ducks. It's hunting season. It was people in Iran, across Iran were. And sorry for interrupting and joking. People in Iran are so proud of these people across the country because they're just taking light weapons and they know that they can't bring them down. They may be able to cause some damage, maybe with a great deal of luck, uh, or with God's help, they could do something. But it is more symbolic than anything else. They're telling them that we're not afraid of you and we're going to kick you out of our territory. So how are the Americans ever going to think about invading this country? People in the small villages take up their pistols and their local guns, whatever it is that they have, and the kids. I don't know. I'm sure you heard the girl saying, "Dad, shoot them, shoot them, hit them." It's clear where people stand on the streets of Tehran, on the streets of cities, in the villages, in wherever you look. There's resistance. There's resilience. This, General Soleimani said, we're the nation of martyrdom. We're the nation of Imam Hussein. That was no exaggeration. The Americans fantasize. The Europeans fantasize. These Arab despots in their media fantasize. These monarchists or whoever they are, the corrupt people in the West, they all fantasize about Iran. They produce propaganda and they believe their own propaganda. It's been 5 weeks now, and the superpower, supported by the entire West, not that they're fighting, but they impose sanctions, they're doing whatever they can to Iran to weaken the country, minus actually sending troops. These despots in the region, even Turkey, even the family, the dictator in Azerbaijan, all of them are in their camp. Erdogan is transporting oil to Netanyahu to help him out. Whose oil? Azeri oil. The dictator there is a part of these Arab family regimes. Jordan, the most treacherous of them all, probably. All of them are in this. The Koreans, the Japanese, their governments, Australia, New Zealand, they're all a part of this. But they failed against Iran in this axis of resistance that has been saying no to genocide. So I thought that the footage, and I'm sure you saw the footage too, and you saw the little girl telling her dad to shoot, to bring him down. It was fascinating.
Yeah. I think many of people are asking what would happen to the second pilot if Iran captures him, because many people are, in the West, the United States, right? Last night we've learned at 11 p.m. they were trying to find him somewhere in that region, in the Yasuj. But what is the latest news in that part is, and if Iran captures this guy, what would be, because people want to know what would Iran do with the pilot.
Well, he's murdered a lot of Iranians, hasn't he? Perhaps perhaps he was involved in the slaughter of 165 schoolgirls. Perhaps he was involved in the slaughter of the 20 young girls who were playing volleyball in that gymnasium. Perhaps he was involved in bombing a hospital or a number of hospitals. Perhaps he helped slaughter people who were driving across the bridge in Karaj or under the bridge having a picnic when things began to fall down on their heads and the heads of their children. Perhaps he murdered some of those little girls in their homes who we who we see images of being taken out from under the rubble. These are murderers. So I don't think that they're going to be welcomed. And any other pilot that's going to be shot down, I don't think that those who find him are going to be very pleased with uh, with seeing that person alive. So, I don't know what happened to this person. I have no idea. I would assume that the Iranians, if they captured him, they would not announce it for the time being. They would like to leave the Americans in a state of confusion. Maybe they could gather more information about U.S. capabilities uh, and the routes that they would use inside Iran and that sort of thing. But maybe they haven't found him. Maybe he's dead. It's unclear. But what is important is that it's becoming evident what we've been discussing for a very long time, that Iran's capabilities were hidden away for when the time is right. And I would imagine that when the United States carries out their assault, and I think those generals were probably saying that don't do that. We're probably saying, let's not do this. The Iranians are prepared for that assault. And I think they gave the Americans a taste of it, and they proved that the generals were right. And if Trump and carries out this assault, then I think there a heavy price will be paid. Nima, I said this elsewhere. I tweeted it too. The Americans could have had a completely different relationship with Iran. It didn't have to be this way. They didn't have to fight a war, and they're going to lose this war. They're going this uh, Epstein coalition is going to lose. These pilots for Epstein, they will not succeed. They can kill kids. These American pilots and these Zionist monsters who've been killing kids all for there since childhood, but or have been planning to do so since childhood. But they're going to lose this war. There's no doubt about it. We will defeat them, and the axis of resistance will defeat them. The Iranians are determined, but it didn't have to be this way. It's because of the Zionists, just the same Zionists that are bringing down the world economy. They pushed the Americans in this direction. About there was a book that I think of, Going to Tehran, and I advise all your viewers to read this book. It was written by two people who worked in the White House, Clint Leverett and Hillary Leverett, a Catholic and a Jew. They were in the White House during Bush. They were in the National Security Council. Clint was in charge of the Middle East, and Hillary in charge of the Persian Gulf. That's how they met, and that's how they got married. And so Clint resigned over Iraq, the invasion of Iraq. So he's a principled person, and so is his wife, Hillary. Both very principled people, very scholarly, top-notch academics with enormous government experience. They wrote a book about Iran, which is, I think, a very good book. I don't agree with everything in it, obviously, but among the books on Iran that I've read, this is the best book around. And the idea in going to Tehran was that the United States should go to Tehran and solve their problems and deal with Iran in a realistic manner. It is not that demonic state or regime that they tell their own people and they believe themselves, that the nonsense that comes from CNN and the Guardian and the BBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post and Fox News and so on. It's not that. Iran is something different. All that media is Epstein class controlled media, oligarchs, the media of the oligarchy, the plutocracy. They wrote that book, and they were hammered, by the way, for it. They were marginalized. They were attacked day and night just for saying that, let's choose a reasonable path. So they wrote this book, and I think people should read it. And if U.S. analysts, if U.S. experts, those who were influential in the United States had read the book, instead of demonizing these people from both sides, by the way, the Republicans and the Democrats, All of them are the same when it comes to empire. Just like the Guardian and Breitbart. When it comes to the empire, they're not that different. But if they had listened to these people, we wouldn't have this war. We would probably have diplomatic relations by now. But that is it. That is how it is. When the state is captured by Zionists and neocons, which are more or less one and the same, then you're going to have forever wars, and ultimately that empire is going to collapse.
Donald Trump said that he's going to send Iran, he's going to hit Iran and send them back to the Stone Age and where they belong. You know, this is exact words that he used to explain that. And Professor Marandi, what does that mean? What is the understanding on the part of Iranians when it comes to this sort of rhetoric? We can argue that Donald Trump is, you know, he doesn't understand the reality of what's going on in the Middle East. But after all, he's the president of the United States. Whatever he says is important. It's important to be considered by Iranians, by policymakers in Iran.
Well, he's a psychopath. He's utterly evil, and his supporters are evil too. But my question to you, Nima, is have you seen people in the media in the United States, in the liberal media, show outrage that he says putting Iran back and taking it back to the Stone Age? Have you seen the New York Times publish major articles that these are crimes against humanity? This is what monsters in human history would do or say? No, because the entire political class of the United States is utterly evil. It is an evil regime. When people say death to America and Iran, it's not, of course, to be taken literally. Like it's like, if I say to you, he bit the dust, doesn't mean he ate the earth, but they want death for this evil empire, not for ordinary people who are walking around in Michigan or New Jersey or I don't know, California, somewhere in Los Angeles, or no, it's this evil empire that has done nothing but evil for decades against our region and our country. The maximum pressure sanctions is to crush ordinary people. Or again, we discussed this once when he lost the Supreme Court case over tariffs. He went and complained and said, "I can't do $1 impose $1 worth of tariffs, but I can destroy countries. That doesn't make sense." No one said, "Who are you? What right do you have to destroy?" He was, I think, alluding to Cuba when he was speaking, because he's strangling Cuba. Is anyone outraged in the political class and the media about he's strangling Cuba? He's a psychopath, but so are they. The United States is led by psychopaths. These people in the New York Times and the Guardian are no different from uh, Fox News or Breitbart. They're psychopaths. They have no moral compass. They pretend to be humane, but that's just a part of their hypocrisy. So no one has said anything about the barbarism. I mean, ordinary people, of course, have. I've seen reactions among friends and others. That's a different story. But I'm talking about the media. I'm talking about the elites. I'm talking about these journalists who work for the media who have Twitter accounts. So I haven't heard any of them say this is outrageous. How could you talk about sending a country to the Stone Age? But if he tries that, we'll meet him there. We'll meet him there. When the infrastructure in these Arab family dictatorships are demolished, and of course the Israeli regime, when they're demolished and there's no more oil and no more gas, the entire world will know who to blame. It'll be Trump, Netanyahu, and the Zionists. So all those factories or um, all those companies in the United States, all those corporations in the United States, all those businesses in the United States, when they go when they can no longer sustain themselves, or when they can no longer make money through agriculture because of the price of fertilizer, then everyone will know who to blame. The U.S. economy will collapse just like Iran's. It doesn't. You don't have to bomb their factories. When it just becomes meaningless to continue using them, it's as if they're bombed. So if the Americans want to take Iran to the Stone Age, and no one is going to stop the Americans, and these regimes that are complicit continue to play a role in this, then they're going to have to face retaliation, and there will be retaliation. And Iran has shown that they have more than enough capability. Iran has not yet escalated. It is, remember, Iran did not start this war. If you look at Western media, you'd think that it was Iran that started the war, just like every other war that they carried out against the country. It wasn't Iran that started the war. It is not Iran that escalates. Iran responds to escalation. So when they struck key installations, the Iranians struck back hard. Now this morning again, they've struck petrochemical plants. The Iranians will retaliate hard, and this cycle will continue. But so if Trump wants to go there, Iran will go there, and that will be it. That will be the end of Trump. That will be the end of many things. That will be the end of life as we know it, because the world will go back decades. And since human beings are not prepared for that world, it's going to be extremely hard. So I hope we don't go there, because everyone will suffer. The ordinary people, it's not their fault that the United States is a country run by psychopaths. It's not Iran's, it's not ordinary people's fault that Zionists are so sinister and evil and they have captured the United States in this way. But Iran is not going to allow the Americans to destroy their country and get away with it. It's not a chance in the world of that happening.
Just moments ago, Professor Marandi, Donald Trump posted something else. Remember when I gave Iran 10 days to make a deal or open the Strait of Hormuz? Time is running out, 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them. It's
Yeah, this is a psychopath, and they probably have. You can only imagine what they have on him. You can only imagine what dirt they have on him. But Iran is not going to back down. And when the 10 days are over, if he begins to annihilate Iran's key infrastructure, we will annihilate everything in the Persian Gulf region. That will be the end of Kuwait. That will be the end of Qatar. It will be the end of Saudi Arabia. It will be the end of Bahrain. And it will be the end of the United Arab Emirates. It will be over. Everyone will have to immediately leave and cross the desert. And by the way, Nima, we are in spring. It's going to heat up pretty fast. The weather is going to get hot. You live in that part of Iran. You know that part of Iran. In the Persian Gulf on the other side, everything depends on electricity. Without electricity, those regimes collapse immediately. And so everything that the US empire collapses in West Asia overnight. And of course, the Iraqis will take them out, and Yemen will take them out. So if they go for all-out war, the Iranians will go for all-out war, and so will the axis of resistance. And who will be the big loser? It will be Zionism. It will be Trump. It will be Netanyahu, because the world will see who destroyed their world. Everyone will see who destroyed their world. In India, those people who foolishly supported Netanyahu and the Zionists, who consider them to be dirt. I mean, they're considered to be just as subhuman as the rest of us. But out of their ignorance, or in many cases out of malice, they support him. They will recognize that it was Netanyahu and the Zionists who destroyed their lives. The world will see everything for what it is. So when the 10 days are over, fine, he can do what he can begin, but Iran will finish the job. We are determined. We are going to end this war, this aggression that's been going on against our country since 1953, once and for all.
Yeah, I think the point is, when he's talking about opening up the Strait of Hormuz, would be So, what would be the role of the United States in all of that? Because they were not prepared to go and fight Iranians in the Strait of Hormuz. They were encouraging, somehow trying to convince Europeans to do that. We know as we talk, Europeans are in contact. They're trying to talk with the Iranian foreign minister, for example. We had the, the the foreign minister of Austria just before coming to this live. She said that she was talking with the foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, about how they can facilitate you know their tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This is the new. Everyone who wants some sort of solution should talk to Iranians, because no one else is in charge of the Strait of Hormuz but Iran. And
Well, that's exactly the point, isn't it? The mafia don, he's not in charge anymore. So they have to they have to speak with Iran. And you saw how at the UN Security Council, France changed its position. So they know where the power lies. They know that even if they joined the Americans in the Strait of Hormuz, they would not be able to change anything. They would only make things worse for themselves and for the world. So the Strait of Hormuz is under Iran's control. And in future, it will remain under Iran's control, jointly with Oman, probably, if they choose to be partners. But Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz. That is how it will be from now on, whether the Americans like it or not, whether the Europeans would like it or not. And the Europeans are beginning to recognize this reality. And Trump is like a 5-year-old child, a psychopath, but a 5-year-old child who's constantly throwing temper tantrums because things are not going his way. So he'll break all his toys, and he'll break your toys, and he'll break my toys, and that's and this is the person who leads the United States. And the political class, not much difference between them and him. He's just more crude. But the very fact that these people are I mean, the French ship, why did it go through? Because France changed its position. So the Europeans, if they want anything from the Persian Gulf, they're going to have to change their attitude, their mentality. Remember, these are the same Europeans that when the Israelis attacked Iran during the 12-day war, they supported it. When they targeted our peaceful nuclear program, they supported it. During this war, when the Americans murdered our leader and murdered our children, they supported it. Now, suddenly, they're making phone calls to the Iranians, trying to sort things out because they know that they miscalculated big time.
I think the main problem in the eyes of those military commanders in the United States is they're running, out of targets in Iran. You remember what has happened with the war against Yemen and Ansarullah. They were at the end somehow, when there was some time, in the aftermath of the initial attacks, they said that they're running out of targets because the intelligence was not there. They didn't know where to target, where to hit. I think that's coming to the reality of what's going on against Iran. That's why you see, petrochemical plants, for example, as you mentioned, in Bandar Mahshar or Bandar Imam was hit. You see the bridge, one of the most beautiful and biggest bridge in the Middle East, was hit by it. It's not a difficult
And
thing.
you see how these monsters try to justify? They say this bridge was being used by like, I don't know, the armed forces.
Yeah.
It's like an ordinary bridge, like
And this Axis
it's like
reporter, yeah,
these are
Barak
monsters.
Rabid,
I mean,
yeah,
they are all tools of genocide. They are all, and journalists in the West, they don't express outrage. They're cowards. I mean, I know many of them follow me. I can, their names. They're famous people. They will not say anything critical. In the alternative media, of course. I mean, the decent people are in the alternative media. Not all alternative media. A lot of the alternative media is controlled by the oligarchy. But yes, because they cannot defeat Iran, they're taking it out on ordinary people. They want people to suffer. That's why he says we're going to send it back to the Stone Age, and that's the so-called the monarchists who and the West and the MEK terrorist groups and all these monsters who cheered Trump on, they all have Iranian blood on their hands. They're all monsters like Trump. They're all psychopaths like Trump, like Netanyahu, like the Zionists, like the media class, like the elites in the West. They're all psychopaths. Either they're psychopaths or they're cowards. But that's even worse because cowards who close their eyes to what psychopaths do, they are more guilty than the psychopaths themselves. But it's not going to. Nothing is going to change on the ground, Nima. They've already started targeting key infrastructure. Iran will target key infrastructure. They send us back to the Stone Age. We will survive. But those Arab dictatorships on the other side of the Persian Gulf, they will not survive. We will install new people there. We will install people there. And the US empire will be gone because it will bring economic collapse. And the United States will have to withdraw from across the globe. They don't have the ability to sustain their empire anymore. And Trump, he'll be put on trial. No doubt. And Netanyahu, do you think Israel will win? How would Israel win when it's the people who fund it collapse? Everything that the Israeli regime has depends on the United States. Its own people are going to go into extreme poverty too. But at least we know that we have been hit hard because we were defending ourselves in a legitimate defense. And all those people on the other side, they know that they've destroyed their world and the world of others because of Zionism.
Do you think that the GCC countries are some of them, or one of them, or two of them, or how do they feel about the reality of the Strait of Hormuz? Is there any sort of communications between Iran and these GCC countries?
Two countries have basically acknowledged that in future they're going to accept. I can't name them, excluding Oman, because Oman obviously benefits from this situation. But two countries have expressed readiness to work under this new mechanism. I've been told the names. I haven't been. I don't know if I can mention them. Nima, you know me. I'm not in government. In the West, they like to think that I'm the spokesperson. I do my own thing. I have my own views. They have no comprehension of the diversity in Iran. It's just beyond their little minds to comprehend how diverse Iran is, how different opinions are expressed. Just a couple of days ago, Dr. Zaif wrote an article which was widely attacked in Iran. He wrote it, not state policy. The government is not happy about it. People on the streets are not happy about it. But he has the right to write that sort of thing. And I have the right to say what I believe. And I think we have more openness here than they have in the West. We're seeing that nowadays. If you oppose genocide in the West, you lose everything. You go to jail. If you hold up, if a Jewish woman of 85-year-old Jewish woman who survived the concentration camps in Eastern Europe, if she holds a no to genocide cardboard piece of paper, she can go to jail in the UK. So they don't comprehend how diverse Iran is. I because I speak to people, I meet people. I've been informed that two countries. I've been given their names, but I did not ask if it's okay for me to mention them. But if you remind me later on, I can ask, and I can send you a message, and if you want, you can talk about it on some other program.
But what is the content? Are they talking about they're gonna prepare to pay the toll passing this Strait? No.
They're prepared to accept whatever it is that Iran is going to, whatever mechanism that Iran puts in place. And I think it's clear that some sort of financial agreement will have to be accepted by these regimes.
I think one of the
Of course,
leverages.
if they last, because if Trump goes after Iran's key infrastructure, then it's over. Iran will destroy everything on the other side because they host U.S. bases. If they destroy whatever they destroy in Iran, they're doing it through their territory, from their territory, or from above their territory. They have no reason to complain. I mean, if I was living in any of these countries, I'd leave now. I mean, after, before the 10 days are up, even though Trump, he could do it tonight. He's already started in Mashhad and in Khuzestan by targeting key infrastructure. So no, it doesn't. You should never believe anything that he says.
And how about the payment system? Is going to be in Iranian currency, in some other global South currency, other countries? It seems that they're not going to pay. Iran is not going to accept dollars. That's for sure.
Yes, that I know. That much I know, but I don't know if it's going to be like yuan or if it's going to be a basket of currencies or it's going to include the Iranian currency. I don't know the details. I don't think they finalized that. That's just for now, no one is leaving the Persian Gulf except for very few boats and ships that Iran agrees to go through for humanitarian reasons, like countries in the global majority that they're very vulnerable, exceptionally vulnerable, or in the case of France, when they make the right decision that's important enough for Iran. I don't know if there was a financial aspect to it as well, but in any case, a few will go. But for now, you know, the bulk of the ships, they're not allowed to go in or out until the situation is resolved in one way or another.
Yeah. Looking at the targets, Professor Marandi, in Iran, in anyone who is independent, who understands the reality of the targets, would say these are war crimes by the United States, what they're doing. And the other important issue that was mentioned by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in his latest tweet on X, he mentioned that the United States, together with Israel, attacked and hit the nuclear power plant in Bushehr 4 times. And many people know all of these countries in the Persian Gulf, they're using this water for, for their survival by, after all. But
And also the oil and the natural gas in the Persian Gulf will be contaminated.
exactly. And
As I said, the Israeli regime does not care about humanity. They are the master race. They are the chosen people. The rest means nothing.
yeah, when it comes to the nuclear power plant in Bushehr, it's important for all of these Arab states, because do you think that is there any sort of communication with the United States? We know what the foreign minister of Qatar said before this war happened, and he said all of us are dependent on the Persian Gulf, on this water. That's why it's hugely important for the survival of Qatar and other countries in that region. But it seems that Donald Trump and Israel doesn't care about any of these countries. I think one of the other reasons for these countries to change their course, to change the policy in that region is this, because they are connected. Their survival is connected to what's going on right now in Iran.
But it's not just them. It's the entire global economy. It's the American people. I mean, these some Americans say we're energy independent. Those oligarchs may make billions of dollars right as we speak, but ordinary Americans are going to suffer like everyone else. It's going to bring about collapse. But the Israeli regime doesn't care. Of course, the Israeli regime is foolish because when there is collapse, there will be huge implications for them, regardless of whether they strike a nuclear power plant and contaminate the region, or whether it's because they push the United States to try to destroy Iran's critical infrastructure. Iran retaliates, destroying all the critical infrastructure in the Persian Gulf region, along with the axis of resistance, and then brings about a global economic collapse. Either way, the Israelis don't win, but it just shows how barbaric they are. It shows how backward they are. And it just shows how they don't care. I mean, the people who root for them, the very few people left on this planet in India or older Americans or some foolish Europeans, when their lives are destroyed, then I think they'll be, when the MAGA people, when they see that their lives are destroyed, I think they're going to think very differently about what Zionism means to them. I at the ultimately, Nima, we are in a very dark
Yeah.
period, and we saw this coming for a very long time. Uh, because the Israeli regime carries, they're carrying out genocide as we speak, and no one will stop them. The Americans, I'm on Poor's show, and I said like how your government is, complicit in genocide, and she rolled her eyes. I mean, these people have they have no sense of morality. They're empty. They're bound to money and wealth and their status and social status, but that's going to go away too if we have that sort of all-out war. But ultimately, this is we will survive. We will rebuild the country, but the United States will no longer be in this region, and their proxies will be gone. Have no doubt. There will be no United Arab Emirates if they push much harder. There will be no Kuwait. There'll be someone else in charge. The slaves and the workers who are trapped there right now, the indentured servants, the underclass, perhaps they'll be in charge. That's something to be welcomed.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Marandi, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
Thank you. Thank you, Nima. It's always a pleasure being on your show. And even though it's dark,
Yeah.
we all should have faith in God. And there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. It may be it may be one of those Iranian underground tunnels that go on and on and on for quite a while. But then there's that open space where the missiles come out from. So people should be optimistic, work hard, be active, work against the empire, against Zionism, have faith in God, and people will ultimately see better days.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.